Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Food Security for Equitable Futures expert interview series. In this, we interview leading experts in the field of food insecurity to gain a non technical understanding of this social problem and ways to address it. I'm Ankita Rathi. I'm a postdoctoral researcher at the Department of Sociology at Lancaster University in the UK. I'm also a qualitative researcher on the project.
And today we have with us a leading expert who's been working on food insecurity in India. And before we begin, can I please ask you to introduce yourself, particularly your name, your organization, your key areas of work, expertise, and interest?
Let me begin with myself, Haldar Mahto, and currently I am working with a Grievance Redressal System, which is meant for electricity department. But prior to this, I was working as a member of the State Food Commission, Government of Jharkhand, which is meant to look after the National Food Security Act implementation and policy issues. So this was my immediate engagement. Before that, actually, I have been associated with Right to Food campaign in India since 2001, along with the other campaign groups like Swastha Abhiyan, which is people's health movement. Actually, from the very beginning, actually, my interest lies directly to work with the community, especially on the issues related to food and nutrition, health, and governance. At the same time, I am also basically my interest goes on the policy issues which influences at a larger scale on these issues like health, governance, food and nutrition security. And I always try to bring what I have learned in the field from my field experiences and link them at a macro level, a larger system to influence the larger mass so that it benefits the majority of the population. Whenever I find basically any opportunity, I don't leave any space to influence the system, because my firm belief is that as an individual or as a small organization, we cannot reach to masses, but it's the system only, governance system only, which can do for the entire population or to its citizens. That's whenever I find any time, any opportunity, I don't leave any scope to influence the policies. Let me say that I have been actually fascinated to work on the policies, especially related to these health, food and nutrition security and governance issues. And this interest actually went on increasing when I found that my field experiences actually have influence on the governance and government actually and on government policies. And I have experienced many of them, especially for the vulnerable section, like influencing policies on health, even food securities for single-headed families, vulnerable population, as well as on nutrition. So I find myself that I find that I have been able to contribute in these areas very well. To see women on various constitutional positions, especially from the Panchayat to Assembly and Parliament. This is mainly one of my interest areas, because I firmly believe that when women do something, they do it honestly, and if they are trained and supported, they can set examples of good governance and that will ultimately affect the well-being of majority of the population. So that's right.
Thank you. So I can see that from your long-term experience, you've worked on a diverse sort of rural development issues. I would particularly want to know what has been, from your long-term engagement on working on these grassroots grounded issues, what has been your experience in terms of working on food insecurity in India? Particularly, also, please tell us about what aspects of food insecurity have you looked at, have you worked with, and what specific geographies have you focused on, regions, states, rural urban sectors? Can you please tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, Ankita. Let me begin with this. When my journey started, actually, I remember to see on food security aspect and livelihood since 1994, long back actually, almost 30 years back. Once I was coming from Ranchi, where I am placed, and moving towards a county development block. And on returning, I found that it was around 3 or 4 o'clock when I found that few children coming back from school, they were climbing on a jackfruit tree, and I stopped there and I found that I saw that they uh, brought one ripened jackfruit and started to eat there only, sitting on the ground. I explored it further why they are doing like that, and then I found that they had jackfruit in their breakfast morning, boiled jackfruit at their home, with some staple food. And while they were coming from school, they were hungry and they had nothing to eat. So on the way, that was actually making a major food, basically staple food for them. So I realized that actually there is a shortage of basically deficiency or problem of getting food. So I tried to further explore that, ultimately where their dependency more, because that was not a staple food, basically food grain paddy or wheat grown area. So I find that their livelihood depends on them, that those forest trees, forest fruits. And that was the time when I was actually trying to help farmers grow wheat. And one of the interns and I remember the name, 30, almost it's 30 years, Andrew Easton, who was from States, who had come here for internship. And when he finished his internship, in his report, he wrote one sentence which was very striking, that he interviewed one farmer, what changes have taken place actually in your families after these agricultural interventions. So he said that my children now go to school after having roti or bread as nasta. That was something very emotional statement. That means before that, they were going hungry to school. So these were few things which actually I remember that forced me, or that actually instigated me to work and see it closely. So I remember again the people who were struggling for 3 meals a day. Mostly they were going bed empty stomach, and from there to date I see the changes where now at least people don't go empty stomach to bed. And the changes have taken place in India, particularly when I saw that due to employment programs like MGNREGA and to some extent almost universalization of PDS, which helped people at least go to bed with some food. So these have been changes I have seen and my experiences. So, but still, in spite of all these large employment programs, these food security programs, yet I find that the vulnerable population, vulnerable, especially SC, vulnerable tribal groups and families from scheduled caste, and the single-handed families, landless families, and other weaker, basically, they are still deprived of their basic entitlements. Many of them still struggle for food because they don't have voice, and they are not getting the right due. They don't have land also, so hardly they produce anything. So basically, I find still that there is a lot of work to be done to do for these people, especially for the weaker section. During this my journey, actually, I got opportunities to go and investigate more deeper into the food insecurity, especially there were reported hunger death cases, and I was one of them to get opportunity to investigate. Something around 4 to 5 hunger deaths I investigated very closely, both from outside government and from the government. And what I found most striking, it's not only, there are many issues, but it's not only about the food production or food sufficiency. See, what I found common in all of them, while investigating, that most of them were from the landless families and had hardly any pakka houses. Basically, they are living in huts and kacha houses, showing their basically saying their status. Actually, they are from the very poor section. Most of them are aged ones, 50 plus, 60 plus age. They were dependent on wage labor and they are very weak. And their dependency was mostly on the PDS, the food grant from the PDS system, and the pensions they were receiving from the government. So when these there was any disruption or uh, any time if they are not receiving continuously for 2 3 months PDS or the pension was disrupted, the situation was that they're forced to go into that position, basically striving for hunger. Similarly, for the children's from these families whose survival was mostly from, at least they were getting food from the schools as midday meal and some hot cooked meal from ICDS. So when I was investigating, I was also looking at their stature, actually nutrition status, and was finding that most of them were actually below the minimum basic standards of nutrition, health and nutrition. So these actually gave me enough inputs and evidences that who are actually struggling and for food and nutrition security, and that's why I continue to work on with these people actually, and I feel that particularly vulnerable tribal groups who do suffer with chronic hunger type of situation with very bad and nutritional status. I have also experienced that even more than 75% of these families are malnourished in terms of height, weight, or you can say protein deficiency or anemia level, especially women who do suffer most. Uh, and with my all these previous exposures which I am mentioning actually with food and nutrition security have actually inbuilt within me to work further on for these weaker sections. Especially, again, this is repeating and coming back again and again, especially with the PPTG families, which are particularly vulnerable tribal groups. They are living in the forest areas, the scheduled caste and other weaker sections who still struggle for them. So mostly living in the remote areas, rural setting, you can say. And Jharkhand is my natural choice of interest to work in. Yeah.
Okay. Uh, can you did speak about landlessness and agriculture, agrarian families, and how people from these communities are more vulnerable to food insecurity, tribal communities, landlessness. Can you elaborate a bit more about how do you think agriculture can impact food insecurity?
See, when I see food, not actually food security or insecurity alone, I see it as a combined one of food and nutritional security. So, in a holistic way, I see that agriculture, this sustainable agriculture, sustained agriculture, is the the most important way of tackling this. This is what I see. I see that wherever the agriculture system is improved, at least people's health, nutrition, and food security issues are addressed, at least, along with the horticulture and other things. So, so, but in the recent past, I have seen that because of climatic conditions, the market-driven forces, most of the people are actually moving towards monocrops or cash crops. So I see that there is a danger of moving towards monocrop and losing crop diversity. So crop diversity, basically, people are leaving many crop cultivation and moving towards one or two single crops, which gives them direct cash income. So uh, and basically the small and marginal farmers who have little land, now I see that there is no viability, or viability is an issue of doing continuing agriculture with that, which ultimately will have actually effect on the food and nutrition security actually, because they are no more interested in growing more crops which will help them, rather than they prefer to go for wages. So the effect of all these will finally it will be on the loss of nutritious foods from their plates, especially with the low income people, small and marginal farmers, and the daily wage earner. I see that with this changing technology and the changing climate, actually, this I have experienced here only. 30 years back, I was seeing the dependency on forests, actually, people around forest dwellings. There 40-50% of the food was coming from forest, but due to climatic change, there have been effect on rain in the forest, drought in the forest, inside the forest, which ultimately is affecting the products within the forest and thereby the food security of the people living around, which constitutes about 25-30% of the population who live around and are dependent on that. So I see there is definitely a change due to this climate, basically climatic change in climate. Similarly, when these policies, I see that the policies are also changing and which are directed more towards promoting centralized system of control over production and market and price control. I see that this will affect largely to the marginalized section of the society and whose purchasing power will be, because of the price index and other things, their purchasing power is reducing. So ultimately, they will have to bear the cost actually by compromising with the food and nutritional requirements. This is what I see. And similarly, in the nutrition programs, which is actually a larger part of the food security, I see. Again, the policies are directed towards centralized system, and I see that this will control the eating pattern and other things, which many people, because people have different tastes and different choices of taking foods. So it's not necessary that the centralized system will actually satisfy everyone. So food and nutrition, and again hunger is linked with that. So maybe this will again affect the centralized system of policies might affect the nutrition and food aspect. So basically, they are both long and short term. I see. I think so.
You spoke about hunger and deaths, especially, and from your own experience, you have a first-hand experience of working with children, particularly from these vulnerable communities, scheduled caste communities, scheduled tribe communities, if I'm not wrong. Can you tell me about what are the primary factors that are driving these kids into malnutrition, into especially these communities that you speak about? Can you elaborate a bit more about what's really driving food insecurity challenges for these kids and even women?
See, in among all these basically communities who belong to marginal farmers, vulnerable groups, particularly vulnerable scheduled castes, they live in a situation where the bread earners actually struggle for daily food requirement. Actually, they don't have time to feed their children also, and their 40-50%, you can say, the daily nutritional requirement and food requirement, they are in shortage always. Always they are in shortage. So what quantity and quality of food grain that is required, that is in any case, they don't have from their own products, and they are dependent on the government services. So in these particular areas, if the government services are not in place, they are bound to go deficit of the food and nutrition requirements. So especially in these particular areas, say for example, it will say forest areas and the scheduled caste population there, 40-50% I see that midday meal suffices their food and nutrition requirement. Similarly, PDS supports them, and the services from ICDS in India, this forms major part of their food and nutrition requirement. So if if those schemes and services are not there, they're affected. The second one is their agriculture. All most of these families, they don't have enough from agriculture and other sources which can meet their whole food and nutrition requirements. So that's why the nutritional status also again uh, is worse in those areas, you can say, or they are suffering from that. If we'll talk about women, actually, again, uh, I found that 70-80% even women are anemic, particularly among those communities and in those areas. So I see the government programs, basically entitlement and enough food and other services can help them come out of that situation.
Yes. And you make a very important point about the role of the PDS, the role of these social policies, and how these social policies are important for these communities to be food secure. So, can you tell us a bit more about what are the challenges of these social policies? What are the existing challenges in terms of the PDS to sort of meet the food requirements of these communities, especially when they're very, are there any challenges? And how best can PDS better sort of address food insecurity amongst, especially amongst these communities that you're working with?
See, a lot of work has been done in recent, I think, last 10-15 years, and which has actually enabled most of the communities to access the services. Yet, the major challenges are actually reaching the reaching the services to the remote areas. That is one. Number two, those many of the families who actually need, who should have been benefited by the entitlement, uh, and are the most needy people. Many of them have left out by you can say by any means. Either they're left out or their part has been taken up by some of the well-off people. They've been left out. So one of the and this PDS service, particularly, if you see that this has been the distribution system lies on private players. So I see that private players never work in the interest of major population. So uh, if this private players, instead of the private players, if government institutions take care of them, say for example like Panchayats, if the responsibility and accountability is given to the Panchayats, I think there could be a better delivery system and it can reach to uh, their citizens. That is one. In PDS particularly, I see. Similarly, we found that there is a lot to work and improve upon the uh, child development, women and child development services. Again, this here again the control and governance aspects are there. Governance issues are there. So governance issue where there is a control of local governance system like panchayats and other things, services are better. But when there is centralized control system, basically by bureaucrats, or they are controlled by outside, uh, monitoring system has been a major challenge of that. So that finally affects the delivery of the services, and which ultimately affects the entitlement, excess of entitlements to these population. Further, they don't have voice actually. These are from the weaker section people, and there is a hierarchy, basically power hierarchy in the villages, and they are from the lower status. They don't have voices actually. So giving them voice, that could actually help, and that can come up through education and other aspects, which could be one of the solutions actually.
Right. Mhm. And you make a very important point about the role of decentralizing institutions, local institutions, uh, for a global people, for a global people who will be listening to us. Uh, can you tell us a bit more about uh, what panchayats mean and how can the panchayats, which are these rural governing bodies in India, how can they play a very important role in addressing food insecurity? From your experience, how some successful panchayats or these governing bodies have impacted food insecurity? Do you have any instances?
Panchayats, they know very well which family actually is struggling for uh, what kind of shortages, basically food security, other things. Let me tell you one experience of mine from my childhood.
Yeah.
In our village, there was a shop, and everyone was coming to that shop every day to take something. And if someone did not came, the shopkeeper knew that there is some problem in his family, his or her family. So he used to find out what happened. He or she has not turned up. Definitely there is a problem in their family, and found that they don't have rice to cook. So that's how he gave rice. ठीक है, पैसा आएगा, money will come or not, but at least they should not go hungry. Similarly, there was a system of basically lightning chulhas. Chulhas means ovens, you can say. So if anyone was not taking a small piece of lighting wood from any from here and there, it was going on. That was an indicator of that family don't is not cooking actually food today. So someone was helping them. So similarly, these panchayats have that knowledge. Their members have that knowledge that which family is struggling with what and whether they have food or not. They know very well. And because they are the citizens, they do vote for them. Uh, they cannot do. They cannot play like the private players play the role. So at least they will ensure that at least their citizens gets the right entitlements. That's why I see that it can reach to them. So that's why panchayats can play a major role. Second one, panchayats have a definite structure, infrastructure, and everything they have. And if services are delivered from a central place, everybody is watching there. So basically, keeping an eye by everyone, which in private service providers it is not possible. So keeping all the services from a public place, keeping an eye by everyone, it itself actually reduces the chances of getting things diverted. So that's why services will be delivered more efficiently. This is what, and I see that they can do it. There are well-intended people, because 10 to 12% panchayat members are there. So everyone can't play a role in a negative way. There are good people actually. So in a say, they will balance it. That's why I see panchayat. They have infrastructure, they have everything, and they have again after 5 years they have to go to their citizens. So they definitely will do something good.
I want to ask you, you've identified a lot of challenges, food insecurity challenges. What, according to you, are some of the primary major food insecurity challenges that our country, India, is grappling with? Sort of looking at short-term challenges, and what are the longer-term challenges, food insecurity challenges that India is going to grapple with, according to you?
You can categorize these basically. See, from few angles, like one is that from entitlement angle, from production angle, from distribution angle,
Yeah.
and again from the socio-economic caste category wise. So the challenges are, one could be categorized when entitlement, you see it from entitlement angle, basically we see it from the governance aspect also. So entitlements could be realized if there is a good governance, and that good governance means I mean here at the local level, decentralized good governance system that can actually help people there. At larger, we can see there are issues of challenges moving towards monocropping and cash cropping like things. So basically losing the crop production diversity. So that actually will, on the one hand, that can help us achieve carbohydrate needs better, but on the nutrition aspect, we will lose something. So keeping this crop diversity, crop production diversity, that's a major challenge because it is being driven by the market, and that actually will basically not help food diversity aspect, crop production diversity aspect, and which ultimately will affect the food diversity in people's plate, especially for the marginal smaller section people, because they won't be able to purchase and take like protein and other nutritious items in their plate. So this is going to be. When we see this from distribution angle, there is a large. It's not that the major staple food production is low. There is enough, but storage, basically procurement, storage, and distribution. These are the key challenges the country will have to face and also address, because every production is not produced everywhere. So somewhere some products are produced which need to be stored properly, procured and stored properly, and transported for distribution to other sites. So it requires a huge investment in basically infrastructure and other things. So that is one of the major challenges. Third one I see is the people from the weaker section, which I say because the education level is very low, they are weak basically in their voice and as well as political and other aspects also positions. So how to ensure their food security, their nutrition security will really be a challenge, uh, especially when there is no good governance. The next one I see largely within the context of national context, this depletion of forests, which is around 35%. Depletion of forest is affecting a larger population. So investing and allocating budgets and funds for particularly regenerating forests, allowing forest rights, land rights to people. Unless we do that, a major section of the population will continue to starve and struggle for food and nutrition security, and which ultimately will affect their human development indicators and so on. So the development of the entire country. That's how I see it.
And thank you so much. That's very enlightening. And I would like to know from your experience, how did COVID impact food security, especially in the region that you're working with? Did it make situation more worse? So how did COVID impact food insecurity?
I think definitely COVID has impacted actually, especially to the migrating population and those who are more dependent on daily wage and contract services. This is what I see. Many who lost their jobs have actually been affected, and to those families, again, food security or even meeting out their daily needs, daily food needs is an issue. Still, it is an issue. Uh, Especially because they have lost their jobs, contract jobs. There is not enough daily job opportunities, so still they are struggling for that. However, here, due to our strong PDS system, at least this mm, due to support of food grain, uh, uh, with exceptions, largely people's carbohydrate needs have been met. But in true sense, there has been effect on nutrition status due to COVID, largely. It has been difficult to meet the nutritional demand and need of the body during this period because people see the other prices of proteins, pulses, and everything has gone up. So it's very difficult to get the nutritious items, basically protein, other things in their plate. So definitely quality and quantity both have been affected, if you can say, and particularly to the weaker section, those daily wage earners, the contractual services who have lost their jobs, and the small farmers. I think they have been affected largely.
How best can we address uh, food security? How can the social policy, existing social policy, best address uh, even the government? Do you think non-governmental organizations can also play a very important role here?
Mm, in a nutshell, I can begin with that good and well intended and designed social policies definitely have a bigger role to play. My firm belief is that well-designed social policies directed towards and promoting equitable distribution of services will definitely be able to address this food security. There is no doubt that government would be the only agency that could play the role for the entire population, uh, because it has the accountability and take forward the policies and programs. Uh, Government have the necessary institutions and systems in place. However, I see that um, that the way government system works, particularly, uh, and the things in the ground, probably this is what my experience is, that they have not been able to see it from the people's point of view. They see it from basically implementation point of view. So that's why the social policies are not getting, many of the social policies are not getting transformed actually in reality. Whereas if you can say this NGOs or civil society organizations, those were good intended ones, they work more closely with the people. They can bring out the real issues they are facing in on day-to-day basis, and through experiments, action research, or innovations, they can bring out, basically suggest ways, policies which can help government to deliver the services in a better way. Uh, Definitely, I see the role in other way also. While addressing the food insecurity, I see that investment in nutrition and investment in education, basically universal and equal education for all. Investment on health and nutrition sector, that can help actually in long run to overcome over this food insecurity issue. So investments in these sections have been actually have gone down, I see, in India. Maybe in other countries, I'm not sure how it is, how they are, but 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 putting uh, separate budget basically to promote all this, and bringing back the agriculture system, basically the older one, basically food diversity, crop diversity, enhancing the production, uh, regenerating forests. These are the policies along these. This could help actually overcome food insecurity issue in long run.
But what, according to you, are some of the gaps that still need to be sort of worked on in food insecurity? Especially, what are the gaps that you think we need more research evidence on?
When I see this gap in food insecurity, I see clearly basically in two different sections. One, those who have enough and are able to meet, but on the other side, those who actually are struggling for that, and the gaps are there actually. So those who don't have enough food and they are struggling for food insecurity, actually the gap is in the governance aspect. So strengthening the governance, particularly in the local level, because and at broader, larger level also, strengthening this governance system actually will have a better distribution system, better production system, better policy implementation, and that can reduce this. So I see that gap is there. One of the gaps is there. The other is I see mm, we are not looking something education as a means to reduce food insecurity aspect. So we can have research and investment on quality education for these vulnerable people, which can transform their food insecurity aspect in long run. So investing in that. So that can help them raise their voice, that can help them get their entitlements, that can help them earn more. So that could be one of the ways, and we need to identify that gap and work on that. Uh, Again, this I have described, but again, this forest people see as forest. Forests I see as forest as livelihood means for 30% population. And depletion and facing drought by these forests, it is actually affecting uh, approximately 30% of the population. So this is one of the areas which needs attention, and it will not only it will be in 2-3 directions, which has to be seen in that way. One is reviving, regenerating the forests, and giving them the people living in and around those who are dependent, providing them the rights to access uh, the products from there. So that will actually increase food security to that population. So this is one of the area which needs to be worked upon. Third aspect I see is this policies towards promoting and enhancing this production of crop diversity, which I say. So for example, I say people used to cultivate earlier multi-cropping system. So if one fails, another fails. So even in dryland or rain-fed areas, there were multiple crops, and people have secured if one crop gets failed, the other crop is there, and that is all. And if there is a good rain, they have all the crops. And because there was crop diversity, it was actually full of nutrition also. They are receiving from different areas. So this is one of the areas which needs to be promoted. And for that, actually, we need to put budgets and investments and policies in promoting this. Another area I see basically the capability or capacity of the service providers in delivering their services. That is not up to mark as of now, and which finally is affecting or impacting the food insecurity of the vulnerable communities. Let me say with an example like say for example PDS system, because it is it is privately delivered now services. It goes to the institutional mechanism or government mechanism. They need to be capacitated to help reach the benefits or services to the poor people. Angadwadi workers in India, there is an issue of capacity of delivering their services, and which ultimately delivering services means whatever the services, 3-4 services are meant from the Angadwadi centers. Probably there is somewhere there is a gap amongst the service providers that they are not able to deliver properly. So this is what I mean, and capacity and capability of service providers is good related, and their capability is affecting the food insecurity. Similarly, there are issues like gaps. I see this land rights to landless people, forest rights to forest dwellers. So this will finally, I think, will affect on their food security. And another one, the social security programs which are there, which supports many of the families who are landless, single, aged. Strengthening those services will actually help reducing food insecurity. These are the few areas I could identify, and I believe that the research are also supposed to be carried out along these lines, which can help government actually formulate policies and do some social policy measures. Yeah.
You make a very important, you speak about the role of rural primary health workers like Angadwadi workers. Can you explain a bit more about what are the challenges there, especially in the rural context?
Uh, Here I see from two aspects. One, two or three aspects it could be. One from governance at the local level, because they are delivering the services at the village level, but they are not governed properly by the from the local governance system. So if they are linked from that, the local governance system is able and capable enough to monitor their services, it will improve definitely. The second one, the capacity of the service providers. So that is an area where government need to invest. So the human resource required to monitor and support the services, which I think which needs drastic support, major support and improvement. So that is one of the missing links I see. And the third one I see the mechanisms of providing services. So basically, could be one of the governance aspects, but from the bureaucratic angle. So, say for example, who who is there to look after the budget allocation, budget expenditure, monitoring of those. So these are one of the areas. If they are handed over to the local governance system, panchayats, and people can see it from very close angle, I think this can be improved. At this moment, I see there are a lot of gaps.
And my last question to you would be, you've identified a lot of local factors that can impact food insecurity. Do you also think there are global factors that impact food insecurity in India?
Let me try to answer that with an example, like rise in petroleum production, its prices. This has actually affected on the cost of food grains, because it is getting transported from one place to another place, and overall it has impacted that. And so the purchasing capacity, according to purchasing capacity, somewhere one has to compromise. Uh, Again, uh, due to this global peace and security regions, and this is also affecting the control over prices of the commodities, therefore I see that this is leading towards food insecurity. Again, I say that especially for the weaker section, vulnerable population, and those who have low purchasing capacity. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mato. I think these are all the questions that I have for you. I
Yeah.
had an amazing time discussing some of the major challenges and the ways you think we can address food insecurity. So, I would just like to thank you for giving us time for doing this interview series today.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.